You were going for primitive electronics, though.
I went looking for records that I found, gave me that sort of experience that I covet when listening to music, which is one of slight transport and mild bafflement.
Well, I have so many electronic records. I was going to all my genres and finding different ones, but anyway, I came up with three that are different, and two have synthesizers, and the other is music concrete. So,
Yeah, so my approach this time was to actually look through my record collection a little more thoroughly than I did for the first primitive electronics episode we did. Because I realized after we filmed that one that I had entire genres that I hadn't even looked at or considered somehow. Kind of a brain fart. So I just looked at those and it was easy enough to find a few records that I really liked.
I've got something that I think belongs in every collection of people who are interested in this type of music. Clara Rockmore's 1975 or 76 album, presented by Shirley and Robert Moog. Uh, this is a record that has been reissued in the last couple decades, but Rockmore was actually a virtuoso player who really had her heyday much earlier in the 20th century. Like I think it was the 30s, if not the 20s. And she was a virtuoso player of this electronic instrument developed by the Russian mad scientist Leon Theremin and named after him, which is a magnetic field that you play by moving your hand. And this is probably an instrument best known for providing the sort of woozy, wobbly uh, chorus effects on Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys, as well as the outer space sounds on any number of 50s sci-fi movies. But it was conceived originally as an instrument that would be played like the violin or something in a very classical kind of classy setting as well. So what we have here is Ms. Rockmore revisiting stuff in the 70s that she had played in the 30s. And so it's like Rachmaninoff and Stravinsky and Ravel, Tchaikovsky, and the like, accompanied by the piano. Technology involved here is truly is one of the first electronic instruments and therefore unquestionably deserving of being classified in the primitive electronics genre, although it doesn't sound in any way primitive. It sounds, as I said, like a string instrument. So
would you
that's
say it sounds like a human voice as well?
it's a sound imitating a voice that you might hear at a seance or something if you were contacting the dead. This second record I have features a another instrument named after this gentleman right here, Simeon. Simeon is playing the Simeon, not the most inventively named contraption, but the music itself is very innovative. This is the Silver Apples Contact, their second album, which came out in 1969. And it's basically this gentleman's oscillator rig and vocals, and this guy here playing the drums. So it really sounds unlike anything that I can think of offhand. Um, the vocals take some adjusting to, I think, because they seem to come from another era when a different kind of vocal styling was expected of people. Um, and there's actually some banjo on the album, so there's this kind of weird point of intersection with stuff like folk music. It's just in the sort of the Greenwich Village folk scene. This wound up being the last recording they made for a couple decades until I think they were reunited by folks at WFMU or something. But they were sued out of existence for this cockpit cover. Uh, and on the front and this picture of a plane in ruins on the back. identifying the airliner. The airliner, yeah, that's right. There's the little Pan Am logo, and Pan Am thought this was I don't know, some instance of lèse-majesté, or insulting their devaluing their corporate brand. But anyway, it's kind of like the showing the band at the in the back on the amidst the wreckage sort of captures the mood. It's very melancholy. It's very driven, space age melancholy music that's with the really driving drums and active electronics, but it's all sort of teetering on the brink of non-existence. So that's another example, prime example of primitive electronics, because it's a rig, as I said, that this gentleman built a great big Frankenstein of an instrument. Item three, which is sort of, this is primitivist because it came out in 1998, but you can see here the good folks of Ad Into X, which is the band name, on the wires of our nerves. And this is cover is actually troping a Stranglers video. If you see the video for Sweden by Stranglers, there you've got the band performing Surgery on Jet Black, the drummer. Here we've got Barry and Steve performing, inserting a synthesizer into the intestines of band member Ann. Anyway, these three folks in the 90s, which is to say the high digital era, I guess went to a bunch of junk stores and flea markets and bought all the old analog equipment, and just sort of plugged it in and started noodling with it. And the results are pretty fantastic on their first three records. After that, I think it kind of lets off in quality. But what everything is, all sounds are electronically generated except for the drum, which are acoustic. And anyway, so they're using all these fat analog synthesizers with these big sort of chunky sounds. And there's a great sort of, when we think here, when we think of electronic music, we often think of something that's ethereal or slick or very polished. Anyway, it seems clean and digital. Here, there's nothing like that. All the sounds sound kind of greasy and recalcitrant, and like they're coming from a bunch of ornery machinery. They've got great titles for their songs, like Gentle Germans and Orgy of Bubastis, which sort of suggest the world they're bringing to life sonically. It's kind of got a real anachronistic World War II kind of something like sounds like it's from a secret weapons project of the Second World War.
Okay, so I have three. I'm going in chronological order, not that it is reflective of that. This is a Turkish record from 1973. It's a collection of TV recordings, supposedly live to Turkish TV. So, and it's
Is that a
called
Finders Keepers product?
The Sign of Quality, Finders Keepers. Yeah, his name is Gökhan Kaynatan, and the album is called Chehennem, which means hell. There's really only two songs, Hell and Road to Hell, on the album. But it is recorded with a portable, pure synthesizer called an EMI Synthi, and it does a great job. There's no real pictures of it, but there he is on the back. But it's wild stuff. It's sinister and brooding. He was recovering from brain surgery when he recorded some of it. That's always a plus. But even though it's over the top, it builds at times. It's got this sparse atmospheric quality that makes it a good listen. I would have to recommend this to hardcore ambient synth collectors. So, I mean, it's available, so easy to get. Okay, so that's 73, 75 from 79. So this is a record I've had for a long time. It's for a project called Getaway Summer Sound by Ann McMillan, who had just won a grant to make music and then was commissioned by Folkways, you can see Folkways on the back, to create this piece. And I had it for years and always thought it was synthesizer. It's a great example of tape music, which is a genre, a modern genre, sort of a subgenre of music concrete. But it's all taped from natural sounds, mostly animal sounds, but they use gongs and bells as well. So it's called Abstracted Animal and Other Sounds. It's sort of like if you were in the movie Pet Cemetery, but waterfowl, frogs, and insects were the pets that were buried. They came back alive and weren't quite normal, right? Sort of bionic and evil. But I have to say, it is an example of labor-intensive work with tape. It's sort of drony and meandering, except it's very articulated in parts, and then sort of builds to become a set piece, like a scene from nature, right? Which is sort of interesting, although it is a bit of a leap to call it natural in any way, nature inspired, perhaps. Okay, this is good for the collector of modern classical, if you're a hardcore collector. And third, this is the most contemporary, although Susan Ciani goes way back to the Buchla, using the Buchla. So this is on the Freakways label out of Brooklyn, which is a label that brings artists together to collaborate. And what brought these two people, Susan Ciani and Ketlin A. Smith, together was their love and ownership of two Buchlas. So one is a portable Buchla and the other is a full collapsible Buchla. But this is ambient synth. There's this textural interplay, and it's improvised, so they end up developing and arriving at certain motives that are really interesting. But it's a long listen. There's just two songs. Highly recommended to any beginner synth collector. Certainly, this is an instant classic. Chris, what do you got?
All right. So my first record is a record of it's a recording from Germany from 1975 of Terry Riley, experimental organist, keyboard player, and Don Cherry. So I guess Terry Riley started off in the 60s, actually really close to where I live, at this place on this little performance space on Divisadero Street. And he started experimenting with like tape loops and things like that. And in the years that followed, he put out a couple of super influential albums, one called In C, one called A Rainbow Curved in Air, and then there was I don't know, and there were a bunch more after that. And he inspired God knows how many people. I just chose this one because I really like this record. I mean, I like those records too, but this is just it's a really cool combination of, Don Cherry playing trumpet over Terry Riley's organ. Just really cool record. So that's number one. And I think actually Jackson and you and I saw Terry Riley a few years ago, right before the pandemic, right?
Yeah, doing In C, I think.
Oh, was he doing NC that night? I don't even remember. No, I think you're right. He's since moved to Japan, apparently. But
Oh, that's a good one.
Hawkwind's Space Ritual from 1973. Hawkwind, I mean, to me, I don't listen to them for the electronics, but I probably, like most people, I listen to them for the guitars. But electronics were always a pretty big part of at least the early Hawkwind sound. They had these two sort of keyboard / synth guys. I remember reading, Lemmy from Motorhead was in Hawkwind, famously, infamously, notoriously, for a number of years, and he played on, he played on this record, for instance. He played on a lot of their best records. And he tells this story about Del Detmer, one of the synth guys. You know, I guess he had something called an audio generator. It was some, you know, the kind of thing that like the BBC had back in the 60s. Just these crazy racks of really early electronic equipment. And as best as I could tell, these guys' job in Hawkwind was just to make really fucking weird noises with it, you know, during the show. And they would, I guess they would compete to see, you know, if they could make audience members sick with the sounds that they were making. So anyway, all that's backstory. This is a great live record. It definitely has some of that stuff running through pretty much every song, but you know, it's also, you know, they were space rock, so there were driving drums and really good guitar riffs as well, and some great bass playing from Lemmy. So that was number two.
Unfortunately, it's not a video edition with the dancing.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah. What was her name? Stacia or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Stacia. I don't know how to pronounce it. But yeah, they always had, yeah, they had like a painted dancer on stage with them too. Third record is what is it called again? E2, E4. I always get that wrong. But this is Manuel Gottsching. Am I pronouncing that right, Eric, our
He's got
resident
an
expert?
umlaut, right?
Yes,
Gutsching.
Gottsching. Okay, Manuel Gottsching. Um, anyway, this guy, he started out as one of the founders of Asherah Temple, you know, sort of freeform psych outfit, you know, associated with the krautrock scene in the late 60s, early 70s. He sort of gravitated towards more electronic sounds as the years went on. This is from 81 or 80. Yeah, 81, recorded in 1981. This was all, he just did this by himself, I guess, in an afternoon. He set up the electronic backing tracks and he got that going. And then it's basically 60 minutes of uninterrupted music. And the entire second half of it, the entire second, you know, side B of this record, he's soloing, playing the guitar over it. And, you know, people say this is, you know, it's house music many years before, it's techno music many years before techno was born. And that sounds kind of right. But it's also just, it's incredibly hypnotic music. It's wonderful, beautiful, hypnotic stuff. And he did it all in one take. He committed it to tape, and then later he released it. So anyway,
Actually, I'm mystified by Queen too. Maybe that's what really, you know, unites us all here. Despite our having very different tastes,
famously, infamously, notoriously.
our common hatred of Queen.
Hey, there we go.